91.9 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham, and Jake Neer of Automotive News is here for his last day in the guest host chair. But it's not the last time we'll hear you on the Metro, of course.
I hope not.
No, it's not.
I really hope not. First of all, before we get into it, I just want to express my gratitude for being able to be here all week. I mean, what an amazing week of shows for one thing, but also just being here. It's always a blessing, Tia. Seriously, I mean, I've been in and out of this studio for 15 years, going all the way back to when I was a little intern in college, and just being here makes me think of all the amazing conversations that I've had in this studio that have pushed me to grow as a person, to think in new ways. And I just hope that listeners have gotten half as much out of it as I have. So thank you so much for having me, and thanks to everybody listening. It's been really amazing to join you this week.
Oh my gosh, the crocodile tears. Alligator tears are coming down right now. I just want to say to you as well, while we're doing this, just the back and forth, you gave us a masterclass. You have been you were a producer here for years. You also hosted for years as well, guest hosted Detroit Today, Mishmash Podcast. So just being across from you, learning the ropes, seeing how you calmly approach live radio. It's been a masterclass. Once again, I've been very lucky to work with you.
Right back at you, Tia. It's been so good.
Thank you so much. But Jake, what do we have coming up on the show today?
Well, we've got a lot of really great conversations here today. One of the things is, I've been thinking for a long time about the self-driving industry. Of course, I cover automotive now, and this is one of those huge goals. When you talk to someone who loves the idea of autonomous vehicles, it's a real sort of society-changing idea, but it's been a bumpy road, no pun intended. So we'll hear about the state of AVs in 2024 with my esteemed colleague, Pete Bigelow of Automotive News.
Awesome. Plus, Detroit City Council meetings are off for the month, but that doesn't mean city work has stopped. Today, we'll chat with the Detroit documenters about the ways city government is trying to make resident life easier. However, water. It is something that most of us, we may take it for granted. Access to water, the availability of fresh, clean water, and a functioning infrastructure. Last week, we had Detroit artist Sabrina Nelson on the show, who recently returned from Africa. She said her appreciation for water changed once she had to walk miles a day to get water for basic needs like bathing and cooking. So, imagine what it would be like trying to farm or grow crops with no immediate access to water. And the lack of proper infrastructure and access to clean water. It also presents itself as a problem here in the state of Michigan. The state of Michigan has a new pilot project by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which is offering financial assistance to help irrigate crops for local farmers. Those interested need to apply for the federal government grant by August 16th. And to talk a little bit more about that initiative now, we have two guests here with us. Patrice Brown is Detroit's Associate Director of Urban Agriculture. Director Brown, welcome back to the Metro.
Thank you for having me, Tia. It's really great to be here.
Yes, it's like you were just here.
Yeah, I was.
Yes. And then also with us, we have Angela Thomas, the Garden Development Manager at Keep Growing Detroit. Angela, welcome to the Metro.
Well, thank you. I'm so happy to be here and talk about something that we've been working on for a very long time.
Thank you so much for being here. So, Director Brown, we're jumping in with you. Talk to us a little bit about what the Michigan Water Source Pilot for Urban Farmers is and why it got started.
Yeah, so this is a program that came out of the USDA, and Debbie Stabenow, our state senator, is our champion, and we appreciate her work in this space. But it came out of the need of urban ag, and so we just ended our National Urban Ag Conference. It was the first annual one. Downtown Detroit this week on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. We had a whole host of guests from around the world, or around the country, I will say, even some maybe from around the world that attended, and we got a chance to hear about all the needs that urban ag has across the country. And so one of the big things is water. This is something that we've been fighting for the last, I would say, 5 to 7 years. And then we are excited that we are getting a chance to get to be the first state with this pilot. And so Debbie Stabenow came and visited our Green Boots Veteran Marketplace a couple weeks ago to announce it. And then it's NRCS is the partner that it will funnel through. And so we're really excited about that connection and the coalitions that's being built around this effort.
So you said you had the conference here, the National Urban Agriculture Conference that was here this past weekend, actually. What were some of the things that you were hearing from urban farmers across the country that were really just things that we may not know that they were facing? We're going to start with Director Brown, then we're going to ask you the same thing.
Absolutely. One of the big things is labor. We need labor. A lot of things that happens on urban farms, we might think of them as a small space, but one of the asks was to think of farms as farms, so not big or small. And the USDA, in their definition, they do have urban ag as a definition that's different from big ag. And so we want to think as farms. That's what I heard come out of the conference. And then really honing in on that labor, the water, how to get access to funding sources, how to overcome some of those barriers through funding sources that come down from the USDA. We talked a lot about farmers getting their FSA numbers so that they can be recognized as farms. And so that's something that Keep Growing Detroit has really been an intricate partner on. And then we talked about those important offices around the USDA. Those offices that they have just started to place in urban spaces are where we have those FSA directors with the USDA. Those were highlighted in this conference as well. We saw and met other FSA directors around the country, and they highlighted what is supposed to be happening in those offices. So we got to hear a lot from feedback from them. We also mentioned to the USDA that Ann Arbor, no pun intended, is not Detroit, and that's where our FSA director was placed. And so we are advocating for that office to be in Detroit. We want to make sure that we hold them accountable to that. And that's something that we will talk further about with the USDA as the months to come.
And Angela, I was going to ask you the same thing. Some of the things that were said at the conference and some of the things you were hearing, especially being with Keep Growing Detroit, and you have that urban. That's just, that's what we do. That's who you are. Yes. So when you hear it and you are directly in it, I guess you can say boots in the mud. Boots in the mud. But, you're right there. So what are some things that you are facing?
Yeah, so I've been a member of Keep Going Detroit and Garden Resource Program specifically for 16 years. So in that time period, I remember myself having to, I was managing a community garden space that had no water. So I would have to fill up large buckets of water from my home and then lug that either by car or with a wagon to the space to actually water my crops. And imagine doing that for 8 years, okay? So that's what we face here in our area. A lot of the farmers in our area, we purchase vacant lots, and so the infrastructure is not there anymore. So what do? You have to figure out how to bring water there, or now what we're doing a lot more of, and what this program will help with, is actually building infrastructure to collect the rainwater that falls. And then we can collect it, and then we can use it to irrigate our crops. That doesn't solve all of the issues, because obviously we're dependent on Mother Nature for that, but it does solve some of the issues. And so that's one way to do it. And so we've been working, Keep Growing Detroit has been working with the Ann Arbor Service Center through the USDA, specifically with the Natural Resources Conservation Service. They have an office there, and they are the ones that are going to be receiving the applications for this program. And that's who we've been working with since 2016. We have a great relationship. You might have seen some of the work that we've done, because you see like what looks like greenhouses around the city. They're technically called hoop houses or seasonal high tunnels. And those were through EQIP, which is another program that they run. So we are trying to kind of, help build the infrastructure so that farmers can actually grow healthy produce, but also scale up their business and maybe sell it, or maybe be able to give away more of what they're growing.
Yes. And this is such an off the wall question here. There's a community garden, it looks like there is at Rouge Park as you're driving down Outer Drive.
Yes.
Okay, so I've seen that space. Are those what I mean by the hoop house? Are those that?
Those are hoop houses,
okay.
Yes, and that's D-Town Farm, which is the largest urban farm in the city of Detroit. It's ran by the Detroit Black Community Food Sovereignty Network, and they have been longtime supporters of gardening in the city and farming in the city.
And food sovereignty.
Yes,
okay?
definitely.
I see them all the time.
Yes.
All of the time. It's so amazing. So you mentioned the vacant lots turned urban farms. How big does an urban farm have to be to go from an urban garden to an urban farm?
Well, we have 30 by 100 lots. Those are the typical size of a lot. And so you can find farmers growing on the lot with setbacks, of course, but they can grow on that 100 feet space, or what's 30 by 100 is 300 feet space, square feet. Mm-hmm. And so some farmers might maximize that. Some farmers might buy 2 lots and start growing on 2 lots. But if you have those hoop houses, it can vary in size. So you can come from your backyard like I did, which I started right in a 5 by 10 raised bed. So don't be intimidated by farming, because it can be very easy and you can start in your backyard. And then I realized that I had a little bit of a green thumb, so I can scale to that 2 or 3 lots next door to our house. And so that's the things that we did as a family. We scaled that up to grow on a lot and a half. Mm-hmm. I'm not growing on all 3 lots, but I'm growing on a lot and a half. And every year I see myself being able to progress. So that's the way we see farms, unless Angela has a different way that she sees farms.
No, I mean, that's always the debate, right?
Yeah.
You're going to get the big farms that are like, oh, that's not farming. You're just growing on one little city lot. That's not equivalent to what we have, 20, 30, sometimes 50 acres or more. But we are feeding people with the food that we grow on our small spaces here in the city. And that counts for something. And I think we do a better job feeding people sometimes than those big farms. That's my opinion, but here we are.
Hey, I'm not going to disagree with that at all. If you're just joining us, we're speaking with Angela Thomas of Keep Growing Detroit and Patrice Brown, the Associate Director of Detroit's Urban Agriculture Office. We're discussing an irrigation grant that can help farmers sustain their practice and so much more. And just kind of going back a little bit, because you talked about the FSA number and just how to become an official farm. What's that process look like? If we can start with Angela.
Yeah, actually, it's a simple process, and we at Keep Going Detroit are able to help get people their farm numbers. Now, one of the things that is important is that a lot of people don't like the government in their business, right? But this number is just really to give you access to the resources that are like this grant that they have. So we do have a way to help you get the farm track number. It doesn't take long at all, and you can do it before the 16th, which is when the application is due. So they can call Keep Going Detroit, or they can call the USDA Service Center in Ann Arbor. Either one of those entities can help assist them to get their farm track number.
So as we mentioned before we got on the mics here, I'm sort of like, one of the garden nerds here at WDET. Every time I come in, they sometimes have me in to talk about gardening.
Love garden nerds.
First of all, first of all, you mentioned how quickly it can expand. It's amazing how quick you can look at a piece of land and go, oh, I could do something with that. Once you get started with the small scale, I was just talking with producer David Lyons before this about how he grows fruit trees, and it's like, oh man, I'd love more space to grow fruit trees. But the one thing I want to go back to water and the importance of water and access to it. As a gardener, the thing I'm most proud of this year in my garden was I got a couple of rain barrels, hooked them up to my downspouts, and got a water pump so that I could just hose the garden using rainwater. And I think a lot of people don't know that, even if you do have the access to city water, it's not necessarily the best for your garden. And it doesn't mean that you can't use it, of course. But if you have access, if you can get your own water from the rain that's just falling on your roof already that otherwise just drains away, that's a really, really valuable resource. Instead of killing off soil biology and things in your soil, you're actually adding to it and feeding it. So if you want to do it the right way, that's a great way to do it, and it's essentially free. But I'm curious, what are some of the burdens to doing that? Are there? Sometimes I get people questioning, is that legal? Can I actually do that?
Yeah, so I'll start, and then Angela, you can go. We have seen people struggle with access to water, but We have farms that have totes, water totes on them. So those are those rain barrels you're talking about. You can find the ones that circled or cylinders, or you can find the square ones where you can catch the water and you can put it right next to your house if you have that, or they're building structures in some cases. So KGD does have a water program that they put out that message every year about how you can sign up to get one of those totes put on your farm. So we have resources through KGD and NRCS that helps farms get that. That's why that farm FSA number is so very important. You need to have your deed, even your, the quick claim deed is fine to get that FSA number in. So that's what we're helping farmers do, is make it make sense. The other things we see farmers get is resources from MSU. So we try to work with DP Fly on the west side, MSU. Sometimes they'll come out and help farmers install things on their farm to help with the water catchment. And then some of the hoop houses are also seeing some resources being built around them to make sure that the water is being captured in those spaces. And then I want to give a shout out to the Water Consortium. Sanctuary Farms is a coalition that Sanctuary Farms John Kent had put together, and KGD is at the table, MSU, and then we have some city folks mixed in there as well. And what the Water Consortium has been able to do is run different types of pilots. And Sanctuary Farms on the east side got a Wabash system put in. Of course, they had to pay for it, but they partnered with DWSD to get that system put into their farm. And now DWSD has an idea of how to install these Wabash systems because they're tapping into the water main. So we're doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we have run out of time. I think we could have continued.
Yes.
I mean, literally the whole hour and continued to talk about this. But Patrice Brown is Detroit's Associate Director of Urban Agriculture. Angela Thomas is the Garden Development Manager at Keep Growing Detroit. Thank you both for joining us on the Metro. Once again, the state of Michigan has this new pilot project by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. It's offering financial assistance to help irrigate crops for local farmers. Those interested need to apply for the federal government grant by August 16th. You can get help and more information from
Keep Going Detroit.
Yes. Thank you so very much, both of you all, for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
All right, coming up on the Metro, restaurants are constantly opening and closing. In this next conversation, we'll hear about the ones that couldn't hold on, as well as some exciting spots that you should probably check out.
It's the Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham here with Jake Neer of Automotive News. Jake, honestly, I could have listened to you talk about gardening and water and how to water your garden without too much going on there. You know, just very eco-friendly.
We'll have to revisit that conversation too. One of the things that I love about this transition here, you hear the term farm to table often.
Oh, Jake, that was good.
Hey.
That was good.
It's what we call a segue in the biz.
Yes, it is. And that was a beautiful segue because a collard greens cook-off, barbecue in Highland Park, and all of the sandwiches you could ever want is happening in the Eastern Market. Those are just a few of the summer food festivals happening pretty soon. And Melody Batens from the Detroit News talked with WDET's Ryan Patrick Hooper all about it, in addition to a report on restaurant closings and openings that recently happened in Metro Detroit.
Well, I'm definitely seeing more openings than closings, which is a good thing. A lot of times when there's a closing, something else is already in place. So either it's the landlord getting a new tenant or the owner of the building switching concepts. So we're seeing, a quick change of, things aren't staying empty for long. I'm also seeing a lot of fried chicken chain restaurants.
The rise of chicken is getting to a point where, I thought this was a good idea, but now I'm not so sure.
We've learned nothing from the closing of chicken guy in Livonia last month or 2 months ago, because two more opened in Metro Detroit. We've got a Dave's Hot Chicken in Shelby Township and a Lee's Famous Chicken in Roseville just opened up last month. So they're still coming.
Yeah, this is the tipping point of fast casual, I fear, for Metro Detroit, but we'll have to keep our eye on that. So let's talk a little bit about these openings and closings. What was something that opened that you've been excited about?
This is a long time coming. The Peach Cobbler Factory in downtown Detroit finally made its debut in late July. This is a fast casual national chain. I think there is one in a Metro Detroit suburb, but this one downtown has been, the signage has been up. People have been peeking in the windows. I know I've been walking by to see, is it open yet? Is it open yet? It is open. It's a very casual operation. It's kind of like you order at the counter and then take your food to go or have a seat. This is definitely for your sweet tooth. They have fruit cobblers, cobbler shakes, cinnamon rolls, banana pudding, pudding shakes, cookies, brownies, Belgian waffles, and churros. Milk, chocolate milk, strawberry milk, and I think that's it. So yeah, there's a lot going on. If you can't decide, they do offer a dessert flight, so you can try 4 different cobblers or puddings. So definitely for a special treat down there. And they are at Broadway and Gratiot there, so right outside of Greektown.
I felt my shirt get tighter. I felt my breathing get heavier. I felt my elastic waistband stretch.
Yeah, it's another sweets factory, because the sugar factory is not too far from there either. So it's definitely another one of those super Instagrammy special treat kind of places.
Hashtag feel fat just hearing about it. What is a closing that was kind of the most shocking or maybe heartbreaking one for you?
The Maury in Royal Oak closed, and I wasn't a regular there, but I was very aware of it. It's right in the heart of downtown. It was kind of a useful place because it was kind of casual but fun. There was a good bar. You can kind of go there for brunch or dinner or even, I think, lunch. But the owner, Aaron Bellin, is actually getting out of the restaurant industry, but he's going to keep that building. And he is passing it on to this restaurant concept called Blind Owl. They have a location in New Baltimore, and this will be their first foray outside of that area, and they're going to be opening at that space probably as soon as next month. And what Blind Owl is kind of a fusion. They're talking about modern Latin, a little bit of sushi, a little bit of bar bites. It is going to be, so this is right downtown Royal Oak, 511 South Main. The Maury is already closed. They are done. So, yeah, like I said, we should see Blind Owl pop up there as soon as next month. So I hope that they do well.
Melody, moving on, we're getting close to the end of the summer. Don't kill the messenger on that one. And one big part of this is food festivals. You see a lot of food festivals this time of the year. Tell me about some of the ones that caught your eye. Yeah,
there's a lot of fun things coming up in just throughout the end of August. On August 15th, there is I think this is the second annual Collard Green Cook-Off Championship. This will be at the Joseph Walker Williams Center on Rosa Parks in Detroit. A bunch of local chefs are going to battle last year's winner, Chef Buddha, to see who has the best collard greens. They're using, local ingredients. There's a panel of expert judges. That is 4 to 7 on August 15th. Coming up this weekend on Saturday, the Hungry Black Man Detroit Food Festival at Avalon Village. There's going to be a variety of food trucks, caterers, restaurants, a bunch of different cuisine. That's noon to 8 on Saturday. It's free admission. I think there is a $10 parking donation, but that's in Avalon Village and there at Highland Park. Also this weekend, the Pierogi Festival is at Sweetest Heart of Mary in Eastern Market. That is all day Saturday and all day Sunday. Lots of Polish food, vendors, Polish dancing, all that stuff. Always a good time there. And then at the end of the summer, on September 1st, which is the Sunday of Labor Day weekend, there's going to be a sandwich party in Eastern Market. Shed 5 is going to be a gathering of sandwich enthusiasts. There's going to be vendors from all over the city. You can get in free and just kind of buy, small samples of sandwiches from a bunch of different spots. That's noon to 5 on September 1st in Shed 5 in Eastern Market, and I'm definitely not missing that one.
I mean, I don't even know where to begin with that. That was Ryan Patrick Cooper, WDET's Ryan Patrick Cooper, speaking with Melody Batens of the Detroit News. They were discussing all the great eats around Metro Detroit and the exciting food events happening this summer, including a collard green cook-off at Detroit's Joseph Walker Williams Recreation Center on August 15th and a sandwich party at Eastern Market on September 1st. You know, just like Ryan was saying, belts on, new loops are being formed right now in the belt. Definitely going to take a run.
I mean, I feel emaciated right now. I need some food. Now I'm hungry.
All of that sounded so amazing. I'm really looking forward to the cook-off, collard green cook-off, and then the sandwich party. I don't know what that is, but I want to be a part of it. A sandwich party. This is the Metro on 101.9 WDET. Today, mostly sunny skies, a high of 79 degrees this weekend. Ahead of us, highs in the upper 70s. And Jake, we do have a listener survey.
That's right. So the WDET listener survey is back. We want to hear from you. What do you think of the Metro? Believe me, we read every single one. So share your thoughts, and you could win some neat WDET swag as well. It's quick, it's anonymous, and you'll be helping us serve you better. Take the survey now at WDET.org/survey.
Yeah, coming up, we will hear a lot about electric vehicles, but not a ton about autonomous ones. In the next conversation, we'll hear about the state of autonomous vehicles and the ways they could be used to improve our lives. You stay right there. Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham.
And I'm Jake Neer of Automotive News. Tia, quick question.
Yeah.
What would it mean for your daily life if you didn't have to worry about driving, like, at all?
One of the things that frustrates me more than anything, putting gas in the car. That whole process to me, I am so over it. I'm so over it. I just did it this morning. And I was just frustrated. I said, I don't want to do this anymore.
That passion that you are expressing right now is one of the reasons why automakers have put a lot of thought and money behind answering that question. What if we just didn't have to drive and maybe even own our own cars? The problem, though, of commercializing self-driving cars and trucks has not gotten much easier over time, despite all that money. So what is the state of autonomous driving now in 2024? To help answer that, we have my own colleague, Pete Bigelow, with us. He's the Tech and Innovation Team Leader at Automotive News and host of Shift, a podcast about mobility. Pete, welcome to the Metro.
Great to join you, Jake. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's great to have you on, Pete. Obviously, as colleagues, we work a lot together behind the scenes on Shift, your podcast, and it's great to have you now on WDET. For the audience here in Detroit, I'm curious, what does the future of autonomous driving mean broadly for American automakers, and how much stake is in those technologies?
Great question. I think, in a way, we're more than a decade into this push for autonomous vehicles, and the answer is still kind of cloudy. For two examples, Ford has kind of given up on its self-driving ambitions for the time being. It shuttered its Argo AI startup that was focused on self-driving cars in October 22. And then on the other hand, you have General Motors has its self-driving subsidiary Cruise, which has encountered some serious troubles in recent months and years, but is still forging ahead. And GM invested $850 million in Cruise just in June, and they're still making a go of it. So at least from an automotive front or a legacy automaker front, it's kind of two different tracks that automakers are on right now.
And the tracks haven't been straight and easy either, even with companies like GM. Obviously, Cruise just last fall saw a really, really huge setback after a crash in San Francisco that had a lot of people wondering if GM would keep going, but it seems like they're forging ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. They had a crash in October of 23 in San Francisco involving a pedestrian. And that, there were some concerns even before that Cruise was kind of expanding too quickly. There were some minor incidents involving their vehicles that led a lot of safety experts to be concerned about their operations in San Francisco. And then, sure enough, they had an injury-related crash that, California regulators suspended their driverless operating permits following that. There were concerns from the regulators that crews had withheld safety-related information regarding the crash. And then General Motors and Cruise themselves idled their nationwide fleet after that, which included cars also in Phoenix and Austin, and a total pause in their operations until this spring when, after a total overhaul of their executive ranks, they've started testing again with a human safety driver on board in Dallas, Houston, and Phoenix.
And of course, GM has had a really sweeping vision for what this means, and they're not alone. I mean, I think when autonomous vehicles first came on the scene, there were just these really optimistic ideas associated with the beginnings of autonomous driving, and lots of investor money to match it as well. Bring us up to speed on whether that promise, that vision is still alive, or whether those hopes have faded a little bit.
Oh boy, Jake, that's yes. Back in, let's call it the initial era of giddiness surrounding self-driving cars, maybe 2011 to 2015, 16, investors bought in. There was a huge amount of optimism that this was going to be a 5-year project that would totally revolutionize transportation as we know it. And I think, we've seen big sweeping goals and visions like that from Silicon Valley before. And this may have been the biggest, maybe comparable only to generative AI today. But the vision was that in both our personally owned vehicles and in shared vehicles like Ubers, for example, that automated drivers would quickly take over and unlock safety benefits, unlock mobility and independence for children and elderly and disabled people who lacked that kind of easy transportation option. And the long and short of it is it's proven much harder much harder problem to crack than people first imagined. And I think that's probably, at least in part, because it's easy to put together a demo showing that this technology can work, but it's a totally different animal to prove that it can be done. As we know in the auto industry, it needs to be 99.999999, et cetera, percent safe.
Right.
And they've done a great job getting to the 99%, but that's frankly nowhere good enough to put a service at scale on the road. And that's just where we're starting to see companies today. The survivors of a big shakeout that's happened in recent years are starting to put cars on the road in a meaningful number. And at least in terms of this industry, I'd say meaningful numbers might be several hundred cars. Like the Google subsidiary Waymo has about, let's call it 650 to 700 cars on the road in 3 or 4 locations. Cruise, prior to its shutdown, probably had 500, 600 cars on the road in multiple locations. So that's the largest that this has gotten right now. And, later this fall, we expect to see some of the first commercial self-driving truck deployments in Texas. So that's another area where this is kind of the future seems near again. But in terms of those, autonomous technology and personally owned vehicles that consumers can go out and buy at a dealership, we're not there yet, and frankly, probably not close to that yet.
If you're just joining us, we're talking with my colleague, Pete Bigelow, leader of the tech and innovation team at Automotive News. He's also the host of Shift, a podcast about mobility. We're talking about the state of self-driving cars and trucks in 2024. Pete, you mentioned sort of the philosophical question, which is, how safe is safe enough? We have a lot of questions around safety specifically, and there are a lot of critics who, are pretty forward-thinking about the future of mobility, but are very critical of how a lot of companies have handled this question. So, what is the status of that, and is that going to be the question that maybe could derail all this?
It absolutely is the question that could derail all this because, frankly, since the modern-day rollout of of self-driving technology, which I guess I would say started with the Google self-driving car project in 2009. The question of how safe is safe enough to do this has been at the forefront. And here we are in 2024, and there's no good answer for that just yet. The federal government has not set benchmarks. Companies are kind of developing their own metrics right now, and there's not even agreement on what metrics are the relevant ones to decide how safe self-driving cars need to be. I think that, in a regular traffic environment, we might say, deaths and injuries are the relevant metrics. But in self-driving, those are kind of lagging. And there's a push to develop more leading indicators as to what safety might be. And it's really easy to game. There's a lot of talk about, can they set up a driver's test equivalent to what human drivers go through? And that would be so easy to game that that might be part of an answer to this question, but it might not be sufficient to determine safety. And it's kind of interesting. I think self-driving technology can be a safer driver in a lot of ways, but it also fails in new and interesting ways. And I'll give you one example of that. There were 2 crashes of Waymo self-driving vehicles in Phoenix. Within a matter of minutes of each other, 2 separate cars crashed into the back of a tow truck that was towing another truck that was facing rearward. And both the cars kind of interpreted that as a truck about to turn into their lane, and they swerved and wound up hitting the tow truck. So that's something that I think human drivers would obviously not do. But there's a lot of long-tail problems like this that still need to be solved. And then a kind of a societal agreement on how safe these cars need to be. A long time ago, and by a long time I mean 2016, the NHTSA administrator at the time, Mark Roskheim, said self-driving cars needed to be twice as good, and that being that if they cut the number of traffic deaths in half, that would be sufficient. And I talked to Mark not that long ago, and we both kind of had a chuckle about that. They probably need to be a lot better than that in retrospect, and I give him a lot of credit for putting a number on it back then. But I think that they need to be close to perfect, which is a very high bar.
This is such a tough question for me because I think about the epidemic of injury and death on American roadways at the hands of human drivers. You mentioned the strange things that self-driving cars will do that humans wouldn't, but also, obviously self-driving cars, they don't get drunk behind the wheel. They don't have, they're not distracted by cell phones. They're not, just doing a lot of the dumb things that humans do on the road that cause all this injury and death as well. And you got to ask yourself, if we can save one life, is that worth it? And if we can save in the magnitude of thousands of lives, why not do that?
Yeah, I think why not do that? I think that part of the answer to that is that we as Americans care a whole lot about how someone dies versus the number of people who die. So if it's human drivers killing other drivers or other road users, we have a high tolerance for that as compared to a robot that's going to kill human drivers or pedestrians or bicyclists. So that's one reason why these cars need to be much, much better. And it's interesting, in recent years, the industry has kind of quietly backed off some of its loftiest aspirations. Back 5 years ago, maybe, people were talking about reducing the number of traffic deaths from 40,000 to 40. And then more recently, I think you have, be better than a human driver as the, general bar that they want to meet, which is a retreat. And it was interesting. I was at a conference in San Diego about 2 weeks ago, and Steve Kenner, who is the chief safety officer of Cruise, the General Motors subsidiary we mentioned, he said that Cruise is aspiring now to be a role model driver, which is an upgrade from better than average. So how you put metrics behind that is a big detail that, again, is still still being worked out by the industry. There's a big push to adopt aviation-like safety systems, especially since the crash rate in aviation has dramatically improved over several decades. But I think that's the kind of time frame we're really looking at. I think it's going to be decades before there is enough time passes where there's enough self-driving vehicles on the road where they make an impact in meaningful numbers. And then also, we need to make apples-to-apples comparisons. This isn't going to be an overall figure on how you drive. To really determine whether self-driving tech can be safer, we need to compare specifics, like how do they do on the highways versus human drivers? How do they do at certain intersections versus human drivers? How do they do, along city blocks? We really need to make granular comparisons, and there's not yet a way to do that, and not yet metrics established that allow us to do that either. So a long road ahead in terms of determining safety, improving safety. But I will tell you that some companies like Waymo and the self-driving truck company Aurora have publicly released, they've run real life human crashes through their simulators and shown how their drivers would have responded in fatal situations, and in many cases shown how they would have avoided those fatal crashes in the first place. So that's maybe one sneak peek at how we're starting to understand safety even in our rears.
All right. Well, Pete Bigelow, leader of the Tech and Innovation team at Automotive News and host of Shift, a podcast about mobility. Really appreciate your insights on the state of AVs in 2024. Thanks for joining us on the Metro.
Very welcome, Jake. Thanks for having me.
And my friends here at WDET are also wondering, along with many Detroiters probably, what's it like riding in an autonomous vehicle? Well, next Friday on the Metro, we'll be climbing aboard one of the city's pilot AV shuttle programs with Detroit's Chief of Mobility Innovation, Tim Slusser. Keep your radio off autopilot and make sure it's tuned into WDET next week.
I did not come up with that pun. Had to be David Lyons, executive producer. However, coming up on the Metro, we'll talk with the Detroit documenters about things city government is doing to make resident life easier. Stay right there. It's the Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. I am Tia Graham. Jake Neer of Automotive News is here as well. And it is Friday. And that means another edition of Detroit Documenters on the Metro. Every week, we're joined by our friends and newsroom partners, the Detroit Documenters, a collective of hundreds of Southeast Michigan residents who are trained and paid to report on public government meetings. Documenters' most recent coverage, bubbling up, is over at the Detroit Water and Sewerage Department Board, where they have a new payment plan for residents. To help us break down the new payment plan and what went on at WDET's, at DWSD's Wednesday's meeting. I just get all the letters. The letters. Noah Kincade is back, the coordinator for the Detroit Documenters. Noah, welcome back to the Metro.
Hey, Tia. Thanks for having me back.
Of course. So what is the EasyPay Plan and who is it for?
Yeah, the EasyPay Plan it's a new payment plan that DWSD is rolling out. The Detroit Water and Sewerage Department. I work with these acronyms every day. Yes. I have an advantage. It's a new water plan that they have rolled out to make paying off past due amounts easier, cheaper to get into, less restrictive, more for everybody. So the way that it works is if you have a past due amount on your bill, you can get into this plan with a simple $10 down payment. And then the remainder of your past due amount will be spread out over 36 months equally and just added on to your existing bill.
Yeah, and how is this different from other payment plans?
It's different in several ways. So the payment plan that it is replacing is called the 10-30-50 plan. And that plan required you to make either a 10%, 30% or 50% down payment just to get on the plan. And that depends on how many times you've been on a payment plan. Okay, and then the remaining amount would be spread over 6 to 24 months. So this is more affordable to get started on. The other big difference is that those other payment plans, I don't. This is for every type of account. This is for residential. This is for commercial. If you are, a nonprofit, if you're a church with a large parking lot, which can really drive up those drainage fees on your water bill, this is literally for everybody. They said the only people who will be denied this plan is if you currently are in some kind of a legal settlement with the water department.
Okay, that makes sense there. So water shutoffs were paused during the pandemic, but started being enforced again. What did the board say about water shutoffs and why they're still happening?
They're back.
Yes,
they are back, and they're going after them because this is really, they've known and they've admitted this many times in meetings we've covered that it's really the only leverage they have to get people to pay. They were obviously not doing shutoffs for a long time during the pandemic. They started them again last year and originally said they were just kind of focusing on neighborhoods that typically have high incomes and, people with big yards and clearly could afford to make those payments. And they went after them first. But it's to the point now where they really need to start getting some of this money coming back into their coffers.
Yes. And how will signing up for the program prevent future water shutoffs?
It will prevent, as long as you are in the program and you're making those payments every month, your water will not get shut off.
Okay.
It's it'll prevent it entirely.
Yeah, and why is this necessary a necessary business step for?
Yeah. So there's a lot of programs that our water department does.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not just out there turning valves on and off, right? They have to maintain all of that infrastructure in the city. It's very, very expensive. We see it all the time. You hit a block and suddenly you're driving through, 4 inches of water because there's a water main break. They're all over town. Those are expensive to fix. But then beyond just cleaning and maintaining, there's a lot of programs that they have for Detroiters that are, making some pretty significant improvements in people's lives. One of the big ones, which is very expensive, is they're replacing all the lead service lines, right? So that costs $10,000, $15,000, maybe $20,000, depending on how long that service line is per house. And they're signing those, they're approving those contracts multiple times a year for like $45 million to one contractor just to go do a whole neighborhood. So these are the kind of things they're doing. There's the backwater prevention program is another one where they're going out and installing backwater valves on people's sewer lines, especially in these neighborhoods that flooded during the 2021 storm. So, their costs are very high, and it's not, I think it's important to remember this money isn't just going to like some for-profit company. This is actually coming back in services.
All right, so our last question is, what can we expect next week, especially as we see city councils out?
Yeah, we're going to be popping into the Regional Transit Authority to find out what's going on with their takeover of the Q line. We are going to visit the Detroit Human Rights Commission, who is going to be approving new bylaws for their body. And then we're going to see what's up at the Belle Isle Park Advisory Committee.
Awesome. I cannot wait to hear about all of those things next week on the Metro. Noah Kincade is the Detroit Documenters Coordinator. We'll talk to you next week.
All right. We'll see you then.
Indeed. And Jake Neer, this is it.
Yeah. Hey, Tia, I just want to say really quick, I am a radio guy at heart, and I just want to let everyone listening know this is a treasure. WDET is a treasure because it is a radio station that still does radio things. It is rare these days, and it has been such a blessing to be here all week with you. Thank you so much, Tia.
Oh my gosh, Jake. Thank you so much for being here once again, giving us a master class in radio, because you're a radio guy, you're an audio guy, and it was so great working with you all week. Cannot wait to have you back on the station to talk not just auto, but gardening and life and everything else. So Jake Neer, Automotive News, thank you so much for being here. Colin Jackson will join us next week on the Metro. This is WDET FM, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and conversation. Thank you so much for listening.